June 1839. Southern China, where the Pearl River meets the sea. On the shore a human, 500 workers are destroying a fortune. They smash open chest after chest of dark, sticky paste, crumble it into trenches of salt water and lime, and flush the sludge into the ocean. The work takes 23 days. 20,000 chests, well over 1,000 tons of opium, a full year's supply for the world's biggest drug market, dissolved into the sea. The man giving the orders is Lin Zexu, special commissioner of the Chinese emperor, and by every account the most incorruptible official in the empire. He believes he is saving his country from a poison. The merchants who own that opium are already writing to London, demanding that the British Empire make China pay. This is the story of the Opium Wars. How the world's largest economy was pried open at gunpoint over a smuggled flower. How a bare rock became Hong Kong. And how 2 short wars opened a wound that a fifth of humanity has still not forgotten. Start 50 years earlier with the world economy, because China is its giant. The Qing Empire rules more than 300 million people and produces roughly a third of everything the world makes. And it sells what everyone wants: silk, porcelain, and above all, tea. Britain is hooked. By 1800, the British import more than 10,000 tons of tea a year, and the tax on it carries close to 1/10 of the government's revenue. Every leaf of it comes from China. But China buys almost nothing back. Nobody in subtropical Canton wants English wool. Only one thing is accepted in payment: silver. So silver drains east, year after year, ship after ship. And China keeps its door on a chain. Since 1757, Western merchants may trade at exactly one port, Canton. They live confined to a strip of riverfront warehouses outside the city wall, the 13 factories. They may deal only with a licensed guild of Chinese merchants, may not enter the city, may not learn Chinese, and must leave for Macau when the season ends. Take it or leave it. They take it. The tea is worth it. In 1793, Britain tries diplomacy. Lord Macartney sails north with telescopes, clocks, and a planetarium, asking for open ports and an embassy in Beijing. The Emperor Qianlong sends him home with a letter for King George: "We possess all things. We have no use for your country's manufactures." The door stays shut. The silver keeps draining. And in London and Calcutta, men are searching for something, anything, that China will buy. They find it growing in Bengal. Britain's East India Company rules northeastern India and holds a monopoly on its opium. Poppy fields line the Ganges. Factories at Putna press the sap into cakes. Auction houses in Calcutta sell it by the chest. There is one problem. Opium is illegal in China, banned by imperial edict since 1729. So the company plays it clean and dirty at once. It sells the chests at auction in Calcutta to private traders. And what those traders do next is officially not the company's business. What they do is sail to China. The smugglers never even have to land. Off the Pearl River estuary, at Linton Island, old hulks ride at anchor as floating warehouses. Chinese buyers row out in long, fast smuggling boats. The coast calls them scrambling dragons, and bribed officials look the other way. It is the smoothest drug pipeline on earth. The numbers explode. For 1,000 chests a year around 1800, 10,000 by the mid-1820s, 40,000 by 1839, roughly 2,500 tons of opium a year for millions of smokers, porters, clerks, soldiers, even the emperor's own bodyguard. And the great river of silver turns around. For the first time in centuries, silver flows out of China. Its price inside China doubles. And because taxes are owed in silver, every farmer's tax bill effectively doubles with it. The triangle is complete. British cloth to India, Indian opium to China, Chinese tea to Britain. Everyone in the triangle profits, except China, which pays with its silver and its addicts. In Beijing, the court sees the drain and debates 2 cures: legalize the drug and tax it, or crush it. The Daoguang emperor chooses to crush it. And he sends the one man everyone agrees cannot be bought, Lin Zexu. Lin arrives in Canton in March 1839 and moves fast. 1,700 Chinese dealers are arrested. Tens of thousands of pipes are seized. Then he turns to the foreigners, surrender every chest of opium, and sign a bond, on pain of death, never to bring it again. They refuse. So Lin seals off the 13 factories, 350 foreigners shut in their own warehouses, their Chinese servants ordered out, for 6 weeks. The man trapped with them is Charles Elliot, Britain's trade superintendent, and he finds the move that turns a drug bust into a war. He orders the merchants to hand their opium to him, promising the British Crown will pay for it. 20,283 chests change hands. Private contraband has just become British government property, 2 million pounds of it, and Lin pours it into the sea at Human. Lin also writes an open letter to Queen Victoria. Suppose men from another land carried opium to Britain and taught your people to smoke it. He asks, where is your conscience? London newspapers print the letter. The Queen almost certainly never reads it. The spark comes in July. Drunken British sailors beat a villager to death at Kowloon, and Elliot refuses to hand any man over to Chinese justice. Lin cuts off supplies and pushes the British out of Macau, and the whole British community ends up living on ships, anchored in a nearly empty harbor called Hong Kong. In November, warships trade fire at Chuenpi. Declared or not, the war has begun. In London, Parliament fights over it. A young William Gladstone damns it as a war more unjust in its origin than any he knows. The war party wins the vote by 9. The fleet sails. What arrives off China in June 1840 is not an attack on Canton. It is a lesson in geography. The British blockade the Pearl River, seize Zhoushan Island halfway up the coast, and sail on north to the Taku forts, the sea gates of Beijing itself. The emperor, suddenly negotiating with cannon in sight of the capital, moves the talks back south and stalls. So in January 1841, the British storm the Bogue forts guarding the river to Canton, and the new weapon shows its teeth. The Nemesis, iron hull, steam engines, 6 feet of draft, guns and rockets. China's war junks are wood and sail. In a single action, she helps destroy 11 of them, and everything they fire bounces off. Chinese commanders report, truthfully, that there is no defense against a ship that moves against wind and tide. Elliot squeezes out a deal, and takes a bare, rocky island he happens to admire for its deep harbor. On January 26, 1841, the Union Jack rises over Hong Kong. Then both governments repudiate the deal. The Emperor because it gave too much, London because it took too little. Palmerston sneers at a barren island with hardly a house upon it. Elliot is sacked. His replacement, Henry Pottinger, arrives with a bigger fleet and no patience. Pottinger stops negotiating and starts amputating. Amoy falls. Zhoushan again. Shanghai. Ningbo. In 1842, reinforced from India, he drives into the Yangtze itself. Shanghai falls. And in July the fleet reaches Zhenjiang, the point where the Grand Canal, the empire's food artery, crosses the river. The Manchu garrison fights nearly to the last man. The rice barges to Beijing stop. In August, British guns anchor off Nanjing, and the Qing Empire asks for terms. August 29, 1842, aboard a British warship off Nanjing, China signs the Treaty of Nanking. Hong Kong, British, in perpetuity. 5 ports open to British trade and residence. Canton, Amoy, Fuzhou, Ningbo, Shanghai. 21 million silver dollars in reparations, 6 million of them for the opium in Lin's trenches. The old merchant guild monopoly abolished, tariffs fixed low by treaty. One word appears nowhere in the text: opium. The trade the war was fought over simply resumes and grows. A follow-up treaty adds the machinery of empire. Extraterritoriality, meaning British subjects in China answer only to British courts. And most favored nation status, meaning any right China grants anyone, Britain gets too. America and France sail in and collect their own copies in 1844. China has not joined the world economy. It has been assigned terms. The loudest result rises at the mouth of the Yangtze. Shanghai, a modest walled county town, sprouts foreign settlements on its riverbank and begins its climb toward the busiest port in Asia. The deepest result is wrought. In 1850, a failed examination candidate who believes he is the younger brother of Jesus Christ raises rebellion in the South. The Taiping War will burn for 14 years and kill more than 20 million people, the deadliest civil war in human history. While the dynasty fights for its life, the West comes back for more. The pretext is a ship barely worth the name. In October 1856, Canton police board the Arrow, a Chinese-owned smuggling boat flying a British flag on an expired Hong Kong registration, and arrest its Chinese crew. Britain declares its flag insulted. Within weeks, the Royal Navy is shelling Canton. France joins in. Its pretext is at least a real grievance. A French missionary, Auguste Chapdelaine, tortured and executed in the interior earlier that year. In December 1857, a joint force storms Canton and will hold the city for years. Its captured governor is shipped to British India and dies in Calcutta, the very city the opium sails from. Then the familiar move north. In May 1858, the Allies smash the Taku forts and dictate the treaties of Tientsin. Foreign ambassadors resident in Beijing, 10 more treaty ports, some deep inland up the Yangtze, free movement for missionaries. And in the settlement that follows, the thing itself, opium, legalized at last as a taxed import. Then the court balks at foreign envoys living in the capital and refuses to ratify. When the envoys return in June 1859 to exchange ratifications, the river to Beijing is blocked with chains and stakes, and the rebuilt Taku forts are waiting. Their new commander, the Mongol Prince Tsing Rinchen, springs the trap, for British gunboats sink, hundreds of men fall, and the assault dies in the river mud. It is Britain's worst defeat in China, and it guarantees what comes next. In August 1860, the largest force yet arrives, 18,000 British and French troops, with rifled artillery and Indian cavalry. They land up the coast, take the Taku forts from the landward side, and take Tianjin. When a truce party of British and French envoys is seized and tortured, half of them to death, the army marches on Beijing itself. At the bridge of Palakeo, Tsing Rinchen's Mongol horsemen charge modern guns, and cease to exist as an army. The emperor flees north over the wall to his hunting palace. The capital lies open. Northwest of Beijing lie the pleasure grounds of the Qing emperors, the old summer palace. In Chinese, the garden of perfect brightness. 350 hectares of lakes, gardens, and pavilions, with European fountains designed by Jesuit artists, holding the accumulated art of a dynasty. French troops reach it first, and the looting lasts for days. Then the fate of the tortured envoys becomes known, and the British commander, Lord Elgin, son of the Elgin who stripped the Parthenon, orders the palace burned, as a punishment aimed at the emperor personally. On October 18, 1860, thousands of British soldiers spend 2 days setting it alight. The smoke hangs over Beijing. China will never rebuild it. The ruins are left standing to this day, deliberately, as a national memory. Days later, China signs the Convention of Peking. The Tientsin Treaty ratified, Tianjin itself opened, fresh indemnities, and the tip of the Kowloon Peninsula, the mainland shore facing Hong Kong Island, ceded to Britain. And then the map moves, for someone who never fired a shot. Russia's envoy, Nikolai Ignatiev, has spent the crisis playing mediator, and now presents his bill, recognition of Russia's claim to everything north of the Amur River and everything east of the Ussuri down to the sea. 1 million square kilometers, outer Manchuria, passes to the Tsar with a signature. On the new coastline, that same year, Russia founds a harbor and names it Vladivostok, ruler of the East. Of all the powers circling the Opium Wars, the one that gained the most land never fought at all. The opium kept coming, legally now. Imports peak around 1880 at some 6,500 tons a year, and by then China grows far more of the poppy itself. By the century's end, China counts its smokers in the tens of millions. The trade is only strangled in the early 20th century by Chinese campaigns and by a Britain finally ashamed of it. In Chinese classrooms, 1839 is page 1 of the century of humiliation, the 110 years of unequal treaties, lost ports, and foreign gunboats that ends only in 1949. You cannot understand modern China, its obsession with sovereignty, its memory of Western navies off its coast, without this story. The ghosts are still on the map. Shanghai's skyline stands on the riverbank the treaties opened. Vladivostok is still Russia's Pacific fortress. And the barren island with hardly a house upon it was handed back in 1997, 155 years of Hong Kong, opened and closed by the story of opium. Remember the trenches a human? Lin Zexu lost his war, his post, and his emperor's favor, and won history's verdict. There is a statue of him in New York's Chinatown. And when the United Nations chose a date for its International Day Against Drug Abuse, it picked June 26th, the day after Lin's trenches at Human finally ran empty. If you want more history drawn on maps, collapsing empires, forgotten wars, and the trades that made the modern world, subscribe. The next map is already drawn.